Hey, what's going on, guys? This is my second Counter Bruce Cumings video. I'm countering his second interview with Democracy Now! He was interviewed by Democracy Now! Again on May 25th, 2009. Because on May 25th, 2009, North Korea tested a nuclear weapon. And he talks about how in 2006, when North Korea tested another nuclear weapon, that was the second time North Korea was willing to give up their nuclear weapons program after they negotiated with the United States, South Korea, and Japan, China, and Russia. Okay? He says the first time, though, was in 1994 they were willing to give up their nuclear program. That is not true. Okay? The 1994 agreed framework that was signed by President Clinton, and some good things came out of that. Okay? I don't hold it against anybody who signed it, but it did not give up the nuclear weapons program. Okay? North Korea still had their nuclear weapons program, but the 50 and the 200 megawatt reactors were dealt away with. North Korea didn't have those anymore, and North Korea was not allowed to develop them, and that kept basically World War III from happening, because had those reactors still been in play, North Korea could have produced 25 to 30 nuclear bombs yearly. But North Korea did not give up their nuclear weapons program. And then he talks about how a lot of President Bush's policies with North Korea were failed policies. Okay, quite frankly, that was just not true, because President Bush delivered 500,000 metric tons of food to North Korea after North Korea agreed to give up their nuclear weapons program for the time being. And he made sure that there were Korean-speaking international aid workers there to make sure the food got to the people of the countryside and wasn't diverted to the military. And that happened for the time being, but the reason President Bush reduced it to 40,000 metric tons was because North Korea stopped delivering food to the people in their countryside. But when the monitors were there, North Korea was, because of pressure from the monitors, the food was going to the starving people of North Korea, the people that needed the food. Not the North Korean military and not the elite of North Korea. Okay, and Bruce Cumings does not note that. Okay, he also talks about how that in the negotiations part, Japan makes things difficult when they address the abductions of their citizens. Okay, those abductions just don't affect Japan. Okay, they affect South Korea too. Let me explain. North Korea abducts people from Japan to train their spies in the Japanese language and culture. But in 1987, two North Korean spies, they posed as a Japanese father and daughter, and they blew up a South Korean airliner. South Korean Airlines 858. They blew that plane up, and the North Korean spy was captured by the South. She's defected. She's become a born-again Christian. She's renounced her ties to North Korea, and she talks about how she remembers seeing a lot of these Japanese citizens who were abducted. She remembers seeing Megumi Yokota. Megumi Yokota was the first Japanese citizen abducted by North Korea. So North Korea uses a lot of those their spies to be trained in Japanese language and culture to wreak a lot of havoc on South Korea, as you saw in 1987. So that does not make negotiations with North Korea difficult, because the abductions issues, North Korea also abducts citizens from South Korea, and it's not always fishermen who just are unfortunately caught by North Korean spies. Sometimes it's not just South Korean fishermen, okay? Sometimes it's, one time North Korea abducted around a bunch of South Korean high school students, and the purpose was to kidnap them so these high school students could train these North Korean spies in the South Korean culture and the South Korean way of life. And people thought they were dead because they were kidnapped in the 70s and 80s, but in the 1990s these students resurfaced. So the abductions issue does not make things difficult in negotiations, because it needs to be addressed. When North Korea admitted to Japan abducting 13 Japanese citizens and apologizing for it, North Korea got a lot of foreign aid from Japan. So the point is that can work in a nation's favor if North Korea admits to abducting citizens and not going through the abductions anymore, not abducting people anymore. So it can work in both nations' favor. And Bruce Cumings does not note that. Bruce Cumings does not mention any of that. And then I don't want to get into it. He says that these Japanese citizens were allegedly abducted, but they were definitely abducted. Too many North Korean spies who have defected to South Korea have come to Japan and apologized to the families. Okay, they've come to Japan after they've defected to South Korea, and they've apologized to the families. Too many North Korean spies who have defected have testified that they did abduct those Japanese citizens. Okay? Hope everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless, and bye-bye. Bye-bye.